Good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to the Wolf Den, presented by Ticket Time Machine. Got a great guest today, Malcolm Lemmons, founder of Athletes Unheard, two-time author, former professional athlete. Welcome to the show, Malcolm.
Appreciate the opportunity, Matt. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so I'm going to start the show today. I had China Morgan on yesterday, and obviously this is a pretty important week for the country. So want to get your thoughts on MLK Day on Monday. What did it mean to you? How do you celebrate it? And then talk about maybe your feelings today with the inauguration and Kamala Harris becoming the first female VP and African-American VP.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously it's a incredible day for Black people in this country, and just being able to witness the first African American vice president being a female, and just what that means to our community, our culture. It's amazing to see, and I spent this morning watching a little bit of the inauguration, and just her being an inspiration for young women across the country. I think it's amazing, obviously, and thinking about MLK. To be completely transparent, I don't do too much to celebrate. I try to, live out, what he preached and kind of what he stood for in my daily life. And I think that a lot of times people take, MLK Day to kind of post quotes and things that he said. But, you look at the rest of the 364 days of the year, they're not actually living it in their daily lives. They're not being an example of those values and the things that he stood for. And so I try to refrain from doing a lot of posting on the day, and really more so reflecting on, my actions and what I'm doing to kind of further that message, and how I can further be an example for other people to live out, what he believed in, and how the progress that he made, in this country to help us all, become better citizens of this country. And so to me, it's more about taking action, not just posting, and doing a lot of reflection and thinking about how I'm making a difference and making an impact in my own right in my community.
So like a year-round thing, like we don't need to celebrate the Veterans Day only on Veterans Day. We should always be celebrating and being appreciative and trying to champion for them. How about like next month being Black History Month? I mean, is it like, look, we should be doing this we shouldn't just focus a month on it, but it's good to have the attention, but we need to have it all year round?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about American history, American history is Black history, and vice versa. We're as much a part of this country as, the people who first came here. And so I think that, Black history is something that shouldn't just be acknowledged in 1 month. It should be taught in schools to children, and to understand what we did to help this country become what it is today, and our contributions, because I think that's part of the problem, is that it's regulated to 1 month, and we think that we get to February, we can we already got the shortest month of the year.
I know,
and so we we get those 28, 29 days to praise Black history, but it's like, how are we acknowledging the people who made an incredible difference in this country for the rest of the year? What are we doing to kind of, going back to MLK, live out these examples and talk about the pioneers and the people who sacrificed their lives to get to the point that I'm even having this conversation with you right now. And so I think it's more important to assess what we're doing on the rest of the days, and not just, the days that are allotted, whether that's a month or a single day to celebrate a hero or a pioneer.
Yeah, I mean, there's enough people to celebrate every day, and then still not even get to all of them, right? And it's funny, you made the joke a little bit about the shortest month, and yesterday I made the joke, I guess it's not really that funny, about when people had asked me, do you have off for MLK Day? And I say, no, my company doesn't like Black people. Have you ever worked for a corporation? We're going to get to your journey, but you were basically you were playing ball, and then you kind of started your own thing, or was there some corporate time in between?
Yeah, I've worked numerous different types of jobs. I've done some corporate work on the government side, some contract work. I've worked in retail, so I've had various roles throughout. My even when I was still playing, I'd come back home after work. So I know that landscape, what it looks like, and how that side operates. Aside from being a business person and entrepreneur.
Did you ever work for someone who didn't give off for MLK Day?
Nope, not that I recall. Mm-mm.
Okay, no, that's good. All right, great. So let's get into your journey a little bit. Tell everyone, kind of who you are, where you're from, and how you got to here. We're going to obviously talk a little bit about mental health and the work that you're doing. We'll talk about athletes and how you are helping them. And let's hear a little bit more about how it all started.
Yeah, so take you back to the beginning. I'm born and raised in Washington D.C. Grew up in a single parent household. Me, my mom, and my brother, and ever since I was young, had this dream of becoming a professional athlete, and so just chased that dream throughout high school. Had an opportunity to play at a highly prestigious high school in D.C. called Gonzaga. Probably the most competitive high school basketball league in the country. I got to play against guys like Victor Oladipo, Quinn Cook, Jeremy Grant. Played with guys such as Tyler Thornton, who played at Duke, Cedric Lindsey, Ian Hummer, who was the all-time leading scorer at Princeton. So just having that exposure to a high-level competition kind of fueled that drive for me of reaching that dream. And so I was fortunate enough to get a Division I scholarship to Niagara University. And so I went there for 3 years, had a lot of ups and downs. It wasn't what I thought my college experience would be, but it taught me a lot.
Why is that? What was it about it that was different? Was it the athletics, just the experience?
Well, I would say my freshman year, we were the third youngest team in the country, and so we started 4 freshmen, and I was one of those freshmen, and it was a huge learning curve. I mean, you go from not really knowing what Division I college basketball is to like immediately being thrown in the fire and having to kind of sink or swim type thing. And so that was really difficult. We lost a lot. And then going into my sophomore year, I had improved a lot, was expected to have a breakout year, was actually, preseason all-team on one of the all conference teams. And actually I got sick. I had mono after the first game of the season. So I had to sit out. Missed half of the season, tried to come back and wasn't really in shape, and kind of, wasn't the year that I expected to be my sophomore year. Then my junior year, I got hurt. And so, junior year is a big year for a lot of guys. And it just didn't pan out. And I was getting into it with the coaches and my minutes wasn't really great. So it was just a lot of things that, didn't go my way. And honestly, some things I could have handled better in hindsight, but it taught me a lot. And so I ultimately ended up transferring, which is something you don't see a lot of athletes doing their senior year. But I kind of took.
Now you do, but you don't see it.
Yeah. Well, I took a leap of faith, man, and I went a level down to NAIA school, and so transferred to Cal State San Marcos out in San Diego. And it was probably the best decision I ever made. I just, went out there and had an incredible season. Was an All-American, Defensive Player of the Year. We finished 32 and 2, I believe. So it was just a really good year for me basketball wise. And that's what gave me the opportunity to go play overseas. So did that for about 2.5 years on and off, and officially transitioned out of the game in 2017.
Where did you play overseas?
I was in Japan.
Oh, wow. Big culture. It's fun. Marbury is China, right?
Yeah, he's in China. Yeah.
Have you ever seen the documentaries and some of the stories on him? It's pretty incredible. How the game is out there and the Americans going. Did you stop? Why did you stop? I guess that's a good question.
Yeah, it is a good question, and I would say that up during my second year, I came over in the middle of the season. We had about a month-long break where we weren't playing any games. We just had practice. And so, we go to practice hour to a day and I would have the rest of the day to myself. And so didn't really know my teammates, didn't know the city well, and I had a lot of time on my hands, obviously, and so I was at a point where I started to reflect and really think about, where my life would be or what I would be doing in basketball. I wasn't in the picture, and I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do going forward. And up until that point, my basketball career had been very unstable, and I was going back and forth from overseas a lot, missing family occasions. So I was like, I know I don't want to play for the next several years. Like, this is not kind of the life I want to live. And so I took that time to start, writing, because I had a lot of time on my hands. And, I came back home and I was sharing, some of the stuff that I was putting out, and people were telling me how inspiring my story was and what I had to go through as an athlete to become a professional. And it was, got a couple of suggestions that I should write a book. And that was nothing that I ever aspired to do. I didn't, had no, ambition to become an author, but I thought about, I would be doing an injustice to other athletes if I didn't tell my story, if I didn't show what I went through and some of the things that I learned along the way. And so I published that book, and that was like the beginning of my transition. And then going into that third season, I had an opportunity to go play in Morocco, and it fell through 2 days before I was supposed to leave. I had my bags packed and everything. And the team was just basically like, we want another player. We don't want you. And so after that, my heart was kind of, leaving the game, and, I had some other stuff in the works. And so I just decided to kind of move on.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. When your heart is out of the game, it's very difficult. And a lot of people continue on, right? But if your heart is out of the game and you have to do this in another country, it just kind of makes that easier for you to be like, look, I'm not going to do that, right? Because if my heart's not in the game, you're getting paid okay, you stay here, your friends are here, you could probably skate through it. I'm not saying you should, but you probably could. But it sounds like, you're out there. It makes it a little bit easier for you to make that choice.
Yeah, and the thing, man, looking back, I definitely those first couple, I guess year and a half that I wasn't playing. I definitely missed it, and I had, I kind of had my foot in the game, out the game. I still kind of wanted to play, but I tell athletes, you really know that you're done playing when you can go a week without working out, doing nothing. And I went a week without touching a weight, a basketball, and was fine. And I was like, I don't the passion is not there anymore. You to be a professional, obviously you got to put a lot into it every single day. It's your job. And so if you're not willing to do that on a daily basis, then your heart is ultimately not there, and it's time to move on. So that's really was the deciding factor for me. It was how would I feel if I don't, play basketball for a week or do anything that's to my development as an athlete? And I was good with that. So.
And you were still playing when you wrote the book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did the book get you to where you start thinking about Athletes Unheard?
That's a long story, man.
We're going to quick one, because we're going to talk a lot about what you're doing there and how it's relevant, especially with everything that's going on in the sports landscape today.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the book opened up doors as far as media opportunities. I started writing for the Huffington Post. I was, able to speak on different panels and stuff like that. So it kind of opened my eyes to the sports world, the athlete empowerment world, and just building a network and other connections with people who are passionate about and helping athletes become a resource for athletes. And so I've done a variety of ventures and tried different things, throughout the past couple of years. I ran a branding agency for a little while, doing digital marketing and branding strategy with athletes. I also hosted a podcast where I interviewed over 100 current and former athletes about their stories and their journeys. And really what kind of led me to this point where I'm at the vertical of, athletes and mental health is it was all because of last year and what I personally had gone through, but also what I saw and read other athletes were experiencing with COVID, social injustice, and just everything that's been happening in the world. And I personally just felt like there was a huge void when it comes to mental health, and not enough conversations being had within the sports world for athletes. And so that's what Athletes Unheard is really trying to bridge that gap between athletes and how they think about mental health.
Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about your mental health journey? I mean, I've talked about mine. It was, I always hate to compare levels of it, but it was compared to the stories I've talked to, and I'm part of the same here. When you talk to like Eric and Steven, and mine was mild. I didn't, ever think about. I always knew it was going to be okay. I don't know why. I just always knew it was going to be okay, and I just had to get past this. Talk a little bit about your mental health journey and what makes it so important to you.
So I would say, to start off, like mental health, especially in the Black community, is something we don't talk about growing up. Like I've never like really even thought about my mental health when I was a kid. Like it was just something like you didn't show, and then being an athlete, like you don't show weakness, like tough it out, man up, whatever. And that's how it was for like my entire life. And then, looking in hindsight, I went through a lot of traumatic experiences that manifested itself in negative ways as I've gotten older. There was periods in my life where I was very angry and lashing out and doing things that were very irrational, and didn't know why I was so angry. And so that was kind of the first realization. And then I would say, and this is a story I don't even think I've ever told. My first actual speaking engagement, when I was done playing basketball, was at a high school. And, I'm speaking in front of probably a room of 30, 40 people. And I've never spoken in public before, but I came to this high school to talk. And I was probably like 10, 15 minutes into the speech. And then I just felt like this rush of panic coming on. Like my heart is racing. I'm starting to sweat. And my mind went blank. And I had to like leave the room. And it was the most embarrassing thing like I've ever experienced in my life. But I was having that. I never had a panic attack before. My grandma had just passed away the week before. I was dealing with some other stuff. I had just, left the game of basketball. So there was a lot happening in my life. And I thought it was just a moment. But I've had like periods of panic attacks since that first episode. And then as recently as, the fall of last year, like I had three massive panic attacks this past fall. And so, I say all that to say that I've neglected my mental health since I was young. And it's been so detrimental to me in other ways as I've gotten older. And it's really been something that now that I'm starting to understand more and learn and read and do a lot of research, for me, it's something I'm taking a lot more seriously. I'm cognizant of how I'm feeling every single day. I'm meditating. I'm making sure I'm in a good headspace because I don't want to have to experience that ever again. And I don't think that, other people really understand mental health to the point that they're doing the same things. And so that's why it's something so passionate for me, is that I've had my personal struggles. And, like you said, it's probably mild in comparison to what other people have gone through, but it's my experiences. And it's like, how can I affect change for other people and get them to understand how important this is, and to also be a resource and use my story as an example to help other people's lives?
Yeah, to that point, I mean, sometimes it's the milder cases that could really help people understand that, look, you're probably going through something that's similar, at least at some point in your life. You're able to get past it, and we're lucky that it was a so-called mild case of it, because it could be a lot worse.
Right.
And so if you don't address it, which obviously it sounds like you did and I did, at the moment you just kind of brush it off, it turns into a lot of bad stuff. And especially in the entertainment world, let's not just to say athletes, but the entertainment world, when you talk about the type of behavior with actors and athletes too, but a lot of suicide singers and comedians, and so it's the mental health is, I don't know why we don't have the type of movement that it needs to have, but I'm gonna go until it's the top thing on everyone's mind, and you're gonna do the same. Athletes Unheard, you're hearing stories, you're helping athletes with mental health. Are you also kind of helping them in their journey on life after sports?
So I think the two are intertwined. I think a lot of times when athletes transition, part of that struggle is from a mental perspective. And athletes don't really, going back to, mental health being so stigmatized, there aren't, there's no conversation. Nobody talks about mental health. The coaches aren't, talking about it. The administrators aren't talking about it. Leagues aren't really having these conversations. And so when athletes transition, they really have to figure out this whole process on their own. And there's, multiple different things they struggle with. But I think the mental part of, going from having your whole identity tied into being this one thing for so long, and then having to break away from that and disassociate yourself from that, from a mental perspective is very, very hard to do for athletes. And part of the reason why you see so many athletes struggling in life after sports.
Yeah. So the NFL does a great job of educating their incoming players. That just stands out to me the most. Have you thought about maybe talking to the NBA about and talking to their players, the new draft class or rookie symposium, stuff like that? Is that something that, is on your radar?
Not me personally, because, I'm not a mental health professional.
Right.
I don't feel qualified to, host any trainings or workshops. And I will say this, like, leagues are starting to move to a point where they're doing a lot more. I think the NBA PA appointed Dr. William Parham, I believe his name is, as the head of director of wellness, health and wellness for the Players Association. So they're starting to move towards a landscape where they're having more of these conversations, and they're implementing more resources for their players, because they're understanding how, it's a pandemic within itself. A lot of these guys are struggling and they're not speaking out about it, and they're afraid to do so. For a multitude of reasons, right? And so I think we're moving towards a world where we're starting to have these conversations, but it's going to take some time for athletes to actually be comfortable. And it's up to us for us to create these safe spaces for them. And so that's kind of what Athletes Unheard is really more focused on, is being an outlet and a safe space for athletes to have these conversations at a high level.
And what's on the roadmap? What's the vision? I mean, obviously you're talking to athletes, where could it go next? How can we expand it?
More storytelling for the time being. I mean, long term, I see, opportunities to align ourselves with brands such as Headspace and Calm. And, you talk about Same Here and what Eric Hewson is doing. So there's a lot of different companies that kind of fall in line with, mental fitness, mental wellness. And so we see ourselves being able to partner and also to provide resources for athletes, whether that's, a database of mental health professionals, therapists, psychologists, who, they can connect with, that they trust, that are vetted. I think that's really important to have as well, because part of the gap is that I've noticed that a lot of these professionals, they're not getting in front of athletes. And while, a university might have someone on staff, they don't have the bandwidth to handle 400 student athletes. Yeah. So it's like, how can we help get these professionals in front of more athletes to support them and to help them, whether they're dealing with anxiety, depression, eating disorders, or they're just in a space where they want to, deal with a sports psychologist to build more confidence on the playing field. So we're really all about one being, an outlet, two being, someone who supports other organizations, and I guess three, just being someone who's providing, resources that support student athletes in general with what they need to be successful, in and out of sports.
And so let's talk a little bit about the NBA. Obviously, that's in the news with Kyrie Irving and his situation. Full disclosure, I am not a Kyrie Irving fan. So I say that because I think that affects the way I look at his situation, unfortunately. And it's, if he needed time off, of course everyone should take a break if they need to have a break. And, there's obviously some laws about, privacy, but when you're a public figure, it's just everyone is, unless you say what's going on, everyone's always like, we don't know. He's just being Kyrie, right? The flat earther guy. And so it's just interesting, but it's even when you have the negative stuff like that, it's good because it brings it out into the discussion. I say, like, with Skip and Dak, right? I mean, it brings it to a higher level of a discussion, which is what we're looking to have. And, where it goes from there, who knows? Do we have the full story? I don't know. Everyone has time off, like sick time off, if you need a mental health. The issue in my eyes is that he's a professional athlete and he's being paid to play. On the flip side, if you have stuff going on and you could be first of all, you could be a risk to yourself, your own physical health, if you're not all there mentally as an athlete on there. And then you could be a detriment to your team. So you want to give them the opportunity to say, hey, yeah, if you can't play, you can't play. What's your feeling on everything that's going on and how we can use this example to kind of move forward?
I think it's a tricky situation, and I think it's tough being a public figure and having to navigate that landscape. And I guess the thing is, no one knows the full story. No one knows what he's actually experiencing. There's a lot of speculation. So it's tough from an athlete standpoint when you have a lot of different pressures and a lot of different things you have to balance and juggle. And so I understand being an athlete of his magnitude, having, to deal with everything he's dealing with, whether that's on the court or from a family perspective or some of the things that he's doing outside to impact the community. I can empathize with that and him having to deal with a lot. Like, nobody really knows, what he's going through. And so I think there's just a lot of naysayers. The media is saying stuff. So I think we're so quick to pass judgment without getting the full scope of the story. And so
don't you think that some of that is on Kyrie for his past actions? I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on a player but if there's someone who was never in the news about anything and he comes and says this, do we look at him differently?
Yeah, I mean, you have a point. He has said some outlandish things in the past, but I don't think that, we automatically, just assume that this is just another one of his antics. Like, this past year has affected us all in different ways at different levels. And I think that Kyrie is someone who is very passionate about a lot of things outside of sports and wants to make a difference from a social justice perspective. And that means a lot more to him. So I think that with everything that we've experienced, he's probably internalizing it a little bit differently. And it might be weighing on him. And I'm not saying that's what it is or that's not what it is. We don't know. And so I think we just have to take a step back and realize no one knows really what he's experiencing and how much he's really dealing with until he's able to come out and be open about it. And that might just be something that's between him and the organization and that he doesn't want to speak publicly. I don't think he owes any of us, Yeah, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, he is a public figure, He's someone who has a huge platform, but at the end of the day, he's his own person and he doesn't owe anybody an explanation as to why he's doing what he's doing. It's his life.
That and being the public figure and he's got a big platform and he's a very well-known person. I think if you're going to open up on things, then you need to open up. And if you decide it's not for me, then that's fine. It's not for me. He just needs to be, honest with his team, and that's it, because he does owe the team. And from the team, it's up to them to figure out what we want to do with this situation. I always like to believe that someone is being honest until they give you a reason not to. And so, he needed his time. Let's see what happens. We don't want people to use this as an excuse, like, oh, I can get out of doing whatever I want. I could just say, I need my mental health is not good. And one of the big things for me is, as I've been through this, and I've talked about this before, every time we have a mental health discussion, I'll probably talk about it, is the difference between someone who's depressed and someone who's just sad. Like, are you just having a moment, or do you really have something going on? And, you just never know. And it's just that these are the types of things that we need to start having conversations about. Like, what's wrong with you? What's going, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Or if someone says, well, Kyrie was smiling at his birthday party. Okay. So what? He was smiling. He could have been, he could go leave that party and want to go hurt himself. Who knows?
Right. You don't know.
So it's like, if you're having a real discussion about it, and there's not a lot of people who do it, right? I mean, how many people have these issues and they just don't talk to anyone about it? And who can you talk to? Whoever you feel comfortable talking about it. The way, for me personally, once I started talking about it, I could talk about anything. You could ask me anything. And I'm not someone who usually just offers that information. People who knew me, they know I'm can be somewhat of a private person. But once you start talking about it, it just becomes easier. And so that's the reason about the stigma. Like, once we start talking about it and everyone starts talking about it, it becomes more normal, then it's not going to be a big deal. And so the same thing when I talked about yesterday, when, women start becoming the first to do this, like, it's not going to be a big deal when a professional athlete starts talking about the mental health. And we're going to want to come from a point of view of saying, let's get this guy help, and not, make a big deal about it in a negative way.
Yeah, and that, to your point, it all goes back to a lack of understanding and education around what mental health is. And I think part of that stigma is that, when people hear mental health, they automatically equate it to mental illness, when those are two completely different things. Mental health exists on a spectrum. So mental health can be anything from, thriving, happy to depressed and anxious. And so it's understanding we all have mental health, and it's not something to be afraid of or to shudder at because, we're having these conversations. This is just about being open about, what you're going through on a daily basis and how you're feeling, and normal that.
I mean, even mental illness is on a spectrum too. The difference between someone who just, is mild, right? There's obviously something that's wrong in the brain, and I mean, even ADHD, and there's millions and millions of kids who are walking around with this, it's not a disease, it's a condition, whatever it is, and they're getting help right away. You'd like to think they are. What do you think is going to be the real push to get mental health to the platform in professional? Let's just say, obviously in America is number one, but in the sports, I mean, is it if it happens in sports, we think it could happen, like the NBA was talking about having the athletes get vaccines, and they think it'll help people feel more comfortable about it. Is that sports can be this, or entertainment, or what do you think is going to be the thing that can really make this a thing, a bigger thing?
When it pertains to mental health, I think it's gonna have to be more athletes speaking out about it. I mean, DeMar DeRozan and Kevin Love, and I think even what Brandon Marshall has done, with his organization is a good start. But it's going to take more than just a couple athletes. It's going to take all of us to proactively have these conversations, and to really sit down and understand why mental health is important, how we're managing mental health in our own individual lives, and what we can do to improve. And I think stardom is very important when it pertains to these conversations. I mean, you've seen what, a group of athletes can do when it, relates to injustice and civil rights, with the WNBA, like their stand, as far as like vote Warnock, like that changed the landscape of this country. And I think when a band of athletes who have a platform, who have a lot of influence, can come together for a common cause to make a difference, what that is for social injustice or mental health or whatever the cause may be, they can affect major change. But it can't just be a couple of athletes. It has to be all of us, all the athletes.
Yeah. So how did you feel about the NBA? Obviously, the WNBA, I thought it was very powerful, but the WNBA in general is not very powerful, comparatively speaking. So, I thought that, how do you feel about what the NBA is doing to address racism? I know we're jumping around. It's all, it's all like, it's tough.
It's
and it's another question for you too, because like my social justice, my social responsibility is extremely important to me. And mental health is going to be at the top of it, but I also want to champion for everything. You being Black and in the mental health space, like how do you you can't do everything all the time, and you got 100 other things. How are you going to focus on which is, not to say which is more important, but how do you balance that, and how do you feel that the NBA is doing? Because I'm not sure. I like what they're saying. There was a few moments, but is it going to translate? I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think the NBA is doing a better job than the NFL. I'll say that.
Okay.
But I think the thing is, like, it's a discussion we can't avoid anymore. Like, it's at the forefront. And 2020 kind of pushed it over the edge. And it's like, how are these major corporations, leagues, companies addressing a major problem within this country? How are we, what conversations are we having? What actions are we taking to affect change, to move towards an equitable and a fair country? And so I think that, when it comes to the NBA and some of the things they've done, first of all, they have tremendous leadership. I think Adam Silver is one of the best commissioners out of any sports league. I think, the work that he's done since David Stern, rest in peace, has been incredible. And he's done a great job of putting the players first and putting their interests first, and making sure that the NBA is doing the right thing at all times. And so I think that their pivotal movement done a lot of incredible things to help for conversations. And for me personally, I think that, obviously I've had my experiences being Black in this country, and it for me, balancing and making sure that I'm in a position to do what I can to create impact and create change. A lot of it is about just supporting the individuals who are at the forefront and on the front lines every single day, whether that's, organizing campaigns or donating to organizations that are doing things pertaining to civil rights and social injustice, or, even just on social media, supporting my friends who are extremely passionate and have been in this space for a number of years and have an expertise. I'm not an expert, but it obviously is something that hits very close to home for me and obviously my family and my community. And so just doing what I can to support those people who are doing a lot of work in these areas, and, donating and just being someone who is in a position to help out wherever I can. But I kind of know where my focus is right now, and the cause that I'm trying to, make the most impact for, and that's mental health in sports. And so that's definitely going to be a priority. But all the other causes that I'm passionate about, I kind of, are at a point where I just support the people for the most part who are actively doing work in those areas daily.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's just about moving forward, right? I mean, that's, if we're moving forward, then we'll get where we need to go. But on that note, also, I said this yesterday, if Dr. Martin Luther King was alive today, I think he'd be very disappointed at the amount of progress that's been made from the larger picture. Like 70 years later, and you're still fighting against some of the things that he was fighting for, that long ago. And I'm not a big historian either, but it's just, as far as we've come, it's also the events of 2020 show how far we still have to go.
You think about it, it's systemic. It's been in our country, ingrained in our country for 400 years, and that's not going to happen in 1 century, or in a couple of years. Like this movement is going to take a lot of time to really create impact and change. It's racism is something that is, been here for a long time, and until we kind of get to the root and, understand systemically, from a high level, how it's, perpetrated itself in our country, it's not going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, in my opinion, the leadership needs to change because they're all old, and
that's another issue.
70, but we're not going to change their minds for whatever reason, whether they don't believe it or there's too much money at stake for them. We're not going to change their minds. I mean, you've heard it. I forget. Even in the thing, it was like I'm voting this way because that's what my constituents want. I'm like, well, first of all, no, they don't want that. But you're so worried about what's going to happen, and that's really, it's good. People like us, we really don't have to worry about what we're saying, and we can believe in whatever we want because we only have to sort of answer to ourselves from a professional point of view, and it becomes hard for people to take that stand. Like you think about people who are, and it's not equal because if you were in the riots and you're storming the Capitol, that's not the way to go. But if you're afraid to just protest peacefully for something that's right, not illegal, people are afraid to post something that they feel or to go to something. So it's it's tough. It's hard. But the people who have the voices need to get louder. Hopefully, in our lifetime, we'll get there. We hope that this year will bring some additional change, and that's the best we can hope for. I'm cautiously optimistic, I guess, is the way I would say it. Want to do it. Just I always like to get a little fun. I know we hit on some serious subjects. I could talk about this stuff all day: mental health and social responsibility. Who was the best player you were ever on the court with, in college or in the pros?
That's a good question. I ever played with or played against?
Either.
I would say played against was probably Austin Rivers in high school. He was unreal. And then played with, man, that's tough. Played with a lot of good guys. In an official game, I mean, by default, I played pickup with KD a couple times. So I mean, he would definitely be the best player I played with. But in an official game setting, it might be Athletes Unheard, who went to Duke. I think just the way his maturity at a young age.
Was that? You cut out for a second. Who'd you say?
Tyler Thornton. He's coaching at Howard, but he played at Duke. His maturity at a young age was remarkable. Like when I first met him when we were 14, I thought he was a senior and he was a freshman. But he just, the way his leadership, his ability to just kind of command the floor and just understand the game from a mental perspective was well beyond his years. Yeah,
so I'm a big basketball junkie, and from the level of difference between elite high school to Division I, and then from Division I to a lower division, and from playing overseas to maybe making it to the NBA. What's the difference? I mean, how close are these people to talent? Not the elite, but how close is it to the people you've played at overseas to be like, I think these guys can play in the NBA?
There's definitely some guys overseas who can, no questions, play in the NBA. I mean, the talent overseas is there. I played against some guys overseas where I'm like, I don't know how the hell you're not in the league. Like, and Richard Roby was I actually recently reconnected with him. He played over in Japan with me, and I think he's the all-time leading scorer at Colorado. But this guy was just like, and it wasn't even like he was like super athletic or just like a knockdown shooter. It was just the way. It's just a different flow of the game. Like the best pros just really understand from a high level, and it just shows in the way they pick their spots, the way that they, just kind of move within the flow of the game and just understand how to think different things through. Is just amazing to see.
For them. That's the same thing.
It's slower.
It's just the game slows down, and when you're a freshman, I wanted to say this before, but I was watching the Gator game, and we have a freshman who was on the court, and for about 25 seconds, it looked like this kid never had played basketball before. Like literally, it looked like he didn't know what. And and as the game got on, you saw he got a little bit more comfortable. So as the season gets on, the talent, if you're good enough, people will find you. But there are limited spots. It's not the NFL, right? There's a lot of different colleges that people can go to get to. I played against some really, really good players in my life who I think man, do I think they can get on the court and hold their own? Yeah, and you're not talking about, you can score 5-6 points, grab 3 rebounds, and you're a millionaire, right?
Right.
It was like in baseball, these people hitting a couple home runs and they're making $100 million. It's crazy. If you never went the basketball path, and think about what would you be doing?
That's a great question. I probably still would be an entrepreneur in some regard. I was a kid in middle school that was like selling candy. I would like get boxes of candy from Costco and resell it at school. Was selling T-shirts and flipping shoes in high school. So I always had this like hustler spirit, and I don't even know where it comes from because there's not one person in my family who's an entrepreneur. It's just something that I love to do. I would like resell on eBay. So that kind of stuff I was always interested in outside of being an athlete.
Yeah. So I'm going to post on LinkedIn today a little bit about motivation and who influencers and following. Is there someone out there that you follow, that you listen to, that is very, I would say, inspirational for you?
I mean, I have a bunch of people who, I look up to, and I consider them like virtual mentors. I mean, definitely Gary Vee. I think he's just practicality. It just hits home. Let me see. Besides that, I mean, there's a couple of random guys on Twitter that I like to follow. I think they provide some sound business advice. I listen to My First Million podcast with Sam Parr. I mean, but pretty much, man, like I'm focused on what I'm trying to do daily, so I try not to get too deep into the rabbit hole of like other people's content and stuff.
Yeah.
But those are just a few of the I guess podcast, like Twitter stuff that I in my downtime pay attention to, follow.
What's the most inspirational story you've heard for people you've talked to, or like the either most inspirational or one that like hit you the hardest?
Out of all the athletes I've talked to,
Yeah, anything.
I would say Hakeem Vallis has a pretty incredible story, and I don't want to butcher his story, but basically he was in a very like sticky situation in Haiti where guns were involved and it was crazy. It's a crazy story. So you might have to have him on here so we can kind of tell it in full detail.
I love all this. I like the stories. It's like the movies, and then you realize that people are probably getting these ideas because there's some truth to it. It doesn't even have to be based on a true story, but you see these movies and you're like, where did they come up with this? Because there's some creative people, but there's like, they probably heard about this from somewhere and it's sticking with them. Like, that would make an incredible story. And so, yeah, no, I love to hear these type of stories. I'm a big, I love watching movies and documentaries. I'm going to watch this One Night in Miami. Have you heard about it? Have you seen it yet?
I haven't seen it. I heard about it with Muhammad Ali and Sam Cooke.
It looks pretty interesting. So that's on my a list of things to do when I get some time. We're going to do some rapid questions here, finish off, and then let you tell people more about how they can get in touch with you. Do you have a favorite food?
Steak.
What kind?
Yeah. Probably ribeye.
Ribeye, that's my favorite. You eat the edible fat? You
Yeah.
eat that, or you cut it? So my wife's going to kill me now, but I'm going to tell the world, with all 2 people who are watching, that she puts ketchup on her steak.
You got to get her to stop doing that.
I'm not going to get her to stop anything. I think she should do what she wants. But I say you're not. When we cook it at home, because we're not big. Well, did she put steak when we had it out? I don't know. Anyway, she can't say I never mentioned her now on the podcast. I actually the funny thing is I like my steak a little bit more well done. And I usually cook my steak more than order it out, which is not, some people look at me when I cook it a little bit too much, but look, everyone's got their thing, right? People eat on eggs too. I think that's crazy. But how about favorite place you've traveled? Did you get a chance to travel at all outside of your playing days?
Not particularly. I mean, I've been to like Mexico, Bermuda. Bermuda was beautiful. I
Yeah.
think Bermuda. I've been to Bahamas, so I've been a couple places. But I would probably say man. So I was supposed to go to Spain last May,
Yeah.
but COVID kind of ruined that for me. I think that my next trip might to be to me and my girlfriend been talking about the Maldives. So that might be on the list. But
On the water, right? The cabin on the water.
yeah, that's it's expensive, but it's one of those things that I definitely want to do at some point in life. So
Yeah. How about you didn't get to a Japanese baseball game when you were out?
nah,
Oh
I was
man.
supposed to go to a sumo wrestling event.
Oh, that would be good
That
too.
would have been dope, but it's like an all day thing, and I forgot why we didn't want to be there all day. So
We went to a base. My brother and I were lucky enough to get to Japan on a trip he won, and he took me, and we went to a baseball game in Kyoto. And they have this tradition. I'll tell the story real quick. They have this tradition where you blow balloons and then you like let it go in the seventh inning. So everyone buys balloons, and we have balloons. And I'm sitting here trying to blow this balloon up, and I can't blow the balloon up. And there's a lady behind me, and she's yelling at me but she's talking in Japanese, and I don't have a clue what she's saying. And she just keeps talking to me for like a minute and a half. I'm like, lady, I don't understand what you're saying. I can't blow the balloon up. So I just gave up for that. Anyway, who favorite movie or TV show? Do you have one, or actor?
favorite TV show and actor would be Will Smith, Fresh Prince. I've probably seen every episode at least like 3-4 times, and I just love this.
Or the reunion? Did you see the reunion show?
Nah, I didn't get a chance to see the reunion, but I saw like clips of it.
I love Hitch. Hitch is one of my favorite Will Smith movies, and the one with Gene Hackman. I could watch that all the time.
I know what you're talking
about.
I can't remember the name of it.
Will's got a great new remix with Joyner. It's called Will. I'll send it to you. It's pretty good. It's on my playlist. The last question: you can spend 24 hours with anyone in the world. They have to be living right now. Who is it, and what are you doing?
Oh man, that's a great question. I haven't gotten this one before. Dang, I want to say probably Barack Obama, and we're going to play basketball.
We had that. So you play basketball with him. Isn't it just great, that video of him just draining the three and walking off the court and giving one of those? He was just. I know people hate him. I don't understand why. I just think he's a good person. He just seems like a good person, and you never know, because with celebrities, you really never know. And it doesn't even matter if you have a good experience with him, because everyone who's terrible people are still nice to some people.
Right.
But he seems like a good person. I'd love to hang out with him. He's probably not. He might be number one on my list. He's definitely up there. No, but that would be great. I
was actually supposed to play with them sometime last year. I'm in a group that plays pickup basketball at my high school in the mornings, and it's a lot of like prestigious professionals in DC play pickup there. And Barack was supposed to come a couple times, but he never made it out. So,
well, I have faith that it could happen. You and I will put together a mental health event, and Obama will be there.
Let's make it happen.
Before we let you go, tell everybody how they can help you, where they can find you. We didn't talk about your book. You wrote a second book. Tell them about your book. Where can they find this information? It's really important to connect and support people like you, because you're on the way to helping people, and you never know what's the saying. You never know the demons that someone's hiding, and if we just help one person who can share this and talk about it and hear it, and they can share it to someone else, it's really going to move us forward. So tell everyone, how can they help you, and where can they find you?
No, for sure. I appreciate the platform and the opportunity. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm on every social media platform at Malcolm Lemmons. You can, check out Athletes Unheard, and we're on every social media platform as well. We have podcasts, YouTube show. So any support around that, or just sharing our content and the stories we're trying to tell around athletes will be really appreciated. And You can get the book on Amazon, Impact Beyond the Game, How Athletes Can Build, Leverage, and Monetize Their Personal Brands. That's available on every major retailer, but the easiest way is definitely Amazon. So we definitely appreciate any support, and if anybody wants to reach out, I'm pretty accessible as well.
Great. Well, look, we appreciate you coming on. I think it's a very important issue. Obviously, it's top of the list for me, but regardless, it's something that needs to be addressed. We're gonna keep fighting forward. It's okay not to be okay, and let's keep up the good work. I look forward to many more conversations like this, and we'll see you the next time. Thanks for coming to the Wolf Den. Everyone,
appreciate it, Matt.